Hello everyone, welcome in, and welcome to the final part in The Devil in the Mirror Tells Me That I'm Fine series by the Hoarding Puffin. I am so sad to say goodbye to this series, oh my god. But let's get into it. This is part 4. After the police had interrogated the idiot who made and sold quirk-suppressing tools, including the muzzle that had been put on Hizashi, one of them had sent the info they'd gotten back to Shouta. Apparently the goons that had kidnapped Hizashi were of the typical heroes are evil, we need to get rid of them variety. And one of them had had a personal score to settle with Present Mic, who'd been part of a team that had busted his brother's illegal underground drug operation. It was about as cliche as it got, honestly. What kind of plan the group had had with the voice hero, the muzzle maker had not known, but at least he'd been able to give some contact information. That had been all Shouta had needed anyways. He wasn't good at emotions, but he was good at his job, and clearly he'd fucked up in some major way by icing out all his old friends. Well, all was good. He only had 2. 3 if he counted Sushi. And he'd been a terrible friend, but maybe he could make it up. If he went after the group that had hurt Hizashi, if he made sure they wouldn't do it again, and that the kind of muzzle his former classmate had been forced to wear into was never going to be made, sold, or used again. It wasn't the best apology. It wasn't any kind of apology, honestly, but Shouta wasn't an emotional person. He didn't know what else to do. 3 weeks after seeing Hizashi again, he called Takayama for the first time. By some miracle, her number had still been the same that he'd saved in his contact list as a second-year UA. She'd been pretty upset at him too, but at least she'd heard him out. And she'd promised to let him know if anything happened with Hizashi, even before Shouta had been able to ask her. He hadn't actually expected her to message him again so soon, but then there it had been. An address, and one additional word. Yamada. Shouta didn't know why Kayama didn't just take care of whatever mess Hizashi was in herself, and he didn't ask. He just rushed to the address, and had pushed through the half-naked, clearly intoxicated mass of people until he'd caught sight of a familiar face of long blonde hair. And now they were sitting on a nearby roof. He hadn't been able to convince Hizashi to let him take him home, so the roof had been a compromise. Shouta had made sure they were far enough away from the edge, though. They were sitting across from each other, avoiding eye contact, neither making the first move for a long while. "What happened, Yamada?" Shouta finally asked. Hizashi chuckled without any actual humor. "I thought we established you don't get to ask that question." His voice wasn't as slurry anymore, which Shouta hoped to be a good sign. Whatever Hizashi had been slipped was clearly wearing off, if slowly. "Nothing happened," Hizashi said after the silence clearly had gotten too uncomfortable for him. He'd never been good with silences. It was a party, okay? That's what they're for. Getting wasted and going home with someone and waking up with a headache from hell and a gap in your memory. I don't think most people purposefully try to get blackouts. Well, I don't either. It just happens sometimes. Big deal. Shouta had to bite his tongue to not yell at his old friend. Instead, he pinched the bridge of his nose and took a deep breath. "Yamada, Hizashi, stop deflecting." He could see the way Hizashi's mask cracked, and could spot the exact moment he gave up on pretending. His shoulders dropped. His eyes dulled, barely noticeably. "I'm fine. I told you I don't need a hero. I just like not being there sometimes." Shouta frowned. "Are you suicidal?" The words were too blunt. He knew that, but his bluntness at least had the effect of getting a genuine little laugh out of Hizashi. "That your strategy, Eraserhead? Pretty sure they taught us better at UA." Shouta didn't answer. After 20 minutes of silence, Hizashi wrapped his bare arms around himself uncomfortably. After 30, he started scratching his heel across the cement of the roof. After 36, he spoke again. I don't know. He tugged at the several leather armbands on his left wrist. I haven't, thought about it like that. I don't want to die. I just... Shouta wanted to move in closer, but he held back. He finally had gotten Hizashi to open up. He couldn't ruin it again. God knew he'd ruined enough already. Fuck, Oboro would have been better at this. He had been so much better at all this emotion stuff. At talking to Hizashi and at getting Hizashi to talk about things he was trying to hide. Like that time they'd gotten him to tell them about his foster family in the muzzle. Shouta had barely done anything then. It had all been Oboro. But Oboro was gone. So Shouta would have to do. Sometimes it feels easier, Hizashi whispered. Not existing, I mean. Does that count? Shouta silently went over the list of what did and didn't count as suicidal ideation. He remembered the worksheet they'd gotten in school. I think that counts as passive ideation. Hizashi chuckled mirthlessly. You're really bad at this. I'm trying to be honest with you. Hizashi hummed. Why? Good question. Why do you care so much? Why now? I don't understand you, Shouta. A soft tremble wove through Hizashi's voice, one that had nothing to do with his quirk space notes this time. You were gone for years. I tried so hard to keep us all together after Oboro, and you just disappeared. Hizashi brushed a hand over his face. I don't get it. Why the fuck are you here now? Shouta had to think about the answer. Hizashi was right. He had just disappeared and closed himself off for 4 years, so why? Why was he here now? Really? I didn't mean to be, he began. I was close by when you got kidnapped and got called in to assist. I didn't know it was you. And when I did know, I don't know. He scratched himself at the back of his neck. When I saw your apartment and put that together with the videos of your recent cases, I didn't like what I saw. Hizashi made a small noise. What, was my performance not good enough for the great Eraserhead? Not what I meant. Silence fell again. I worry. I tried not to, but Shouta took a deep breath. I already lost Oboro. And I realized that I don't want to lose you too. He hadn't really thought about it quite like that. Not in such specifics, but the second the words left his mouth, he knew it was the truth. And it took you 4 years to realize that? Shouta looked over the roofs of the city around them. It was so different from the view of the UA roof. I know. I'm sorry. Another pause. You deserve better, Hizashi. But I'm here now. Silence. Again. Then he heard fabric rustle. When he looked up, Hizashi had inched closer until the tips of their feet touched. A strand of blonde hair was falling into Hizashi's green eyes. He'd taken off his sunglasses and was twirling them between his hands. He looked so tired, Shouta thought. It was almost impossible to imagine this man as the energetic present Mic. Would things have been different if he had gotten his head out of his ass earlier? Make no mistake, Shouta continued. I still think you're annoying and too loud. That hasn't changed since UA. Hizashi laughed, sounding a little less exhausted already. Man, you're really bad at this. Shouta shrugged. You're still here. Can't be doing too badly. Hizashi shrugged. I don't know if I've ever heard you talk this much, at least. You're doing something. I'm talking about the same amount as I did back in school. See, Shouta, that thing I just did? Yeah, it's called a joke. You must be doing better if you're back to joking. Shouta didn't add that seeing Hizashi's pupils returning to their normal size was a more precise sign of whatever he'd been was wearing off, but he didn't need to. The cold of the night was starting to get uncomfortable. Hizashi wrapped his arms tighter around himself and pulled his legs to his chest, resting his chin on his knee. It was strange, talking to Shouta again. Not yelling, not telling him to fuck off. Actually talking. It was almost painfully familiar, as if no time had passed at all. He could almost imagine Oboro sitting next to them. Almost. Shouta? Shouta hummed. I needed you. Why did it feel so strange to admit it, as if he had to drag out every single word from his own mouth? What are you talking about? After Oboro died, I tried to be there for you, but I needed you to be there for me too, you know? I lost him just as much as you did. Shouta was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. More silence. Maybe it would have been better if I had died instead of him that day. Hey! Shouta winced, reflexively pressing his hands against his ears. All the sounds were muffled, lost behind sharp ringing. He shot Hizashi a pointedly disgruntled look. The voice hero had the decency to look sheepish. Sorry, he signed. They spent about 6 or 7 minutes in silence before this ringing finally ebbed off. Was that necessary, Hizashi? Yeah. If you get to call me out on my suicidal ideation, I get to call you out on yours. Fair and square. Shouta couldn't really argue with that, even though he wasn't nearly as self-destructive as Hizashi. Or, not the same kind of self-destructive. The other did have a point. Thinking about a what-if scenario in which you died instead of Oboro it doesn't change anything, Hizashi continued. You like rationality. Let's just think about it rationally then. If you had died on that day, then Oboro and I would have grieved you, the way you and I are grieving Oboro. And sure, maybe Oboro wouldn't have ignored me like you did. Wait, this isn't me blaming you, so shut up. I'm trying to make a point here. Shouta closed his mouth with an audible click. But we probably would have been fucked up in a different way, because grief fucks you up. And it's not like our teachers gave us good support after everything. They were fine letting you destroy yourself in gym class, and with me acting as a one-man support system for you instead of, oh, I don't know, getting help myself. Shouta hummed in vague agreement. Their teachers really should have been there for them more objectively. So, it's no use thinking about how things might have been different. What happened, back then and after. Hizashi twirled a strand of hair around his finger. We can't change what happened. We can't make Oboro alive again. You can't take back the 4 years that you ignored me for. I can't take back the reckless shit I did. All we can do is keep going. Shouta thought about that for a moment, eyes never leaving Hizashi, not for 1 second. I owe you an apology. I can't buy anything with an apology show. Hizashi's smile was a bit watery, but it was real. Just don't leave again. Stay. Shouta nodded. I can do that. And on the roof, above the lights of the city, Aizawa Shouta and Yamada Hizashi reached out for each other and intertwined their fingers. Still broken, still hurting, still grieving, but with the promise of getting better. And with that, the wonderful one-shot is ended. Oh god, guys, me when angsty Eraser Mic, me when they have bad coping mechanisms, me when they're there for each other in spite of it, just all of it. It's so good. It's so good. I'm obsessed with this fic. And if you are as obsessed with this fic as I am, you should go click the link down below, leave a kudos, a comment on the original fic, because Hoarding Puffin deserves it so very much. And if you liked me reading this fic, feel free to leave me a like, a comment, and maybe even a subscribe, since I will be continuing to read podfics for a while, hopefully. Yeah, I really enjoyed getting to read this fic for you guys. If you enjoyed it as well, Puffin is working on some cool cosplay stuff inspired by this inspired by this fic. My goodness, guys, it's so late. I need to go to sleep. Anyway, you should stay tuned on Hoarding Puffin socials to stay up to date with that, because the world of this fic will still be coming to life in a different format very soon. So anyway, I appreciate you guys so much, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye!